Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion. Many people dream about success from a young age. We see the covers of magazines featuring young entrepreneurs, those who thought different, defied the status quo, and decided to embark on a journey that led them to massive wealth and success. We all know these stories, but sometimes when someone tries to achieve success by any means necessary, it can go very wrong. Such is the story of Charlie Javice. On the surface, everything seemed flawless. Millions of dollars in funding from JP Morgan, a spot on the prestigious Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and support from industry titans like Apollo's CEO, Mark Rowan. But lurking behind this polished facade was a network of lies, deceit, and flagrant exaggerations. For a decade, Charlie carefully crafted an image that deflected nearly all controversies. But as we've seen previously on this channel, her precious house of cards eventually came crashing down.
Could be facing up to 100 years in prison accused of defrauding JP Morgan Chase out of millions.
Charlie Javice. She was a hotshot in the startup world.
Didn't scam students, but scammed the bank.
So who was she, and how did she manage to fool and defraud one of the biggest banks in the world? This is the story of Charlie Javice. Charlie's entrepreneurial aspirations seems to have taken root in her teenage years. She grew up in an affluent New York family, attending a well-known French-American private school in New York. The idea for her first venture came while she was still in high school. In a story strangely mirroring Elizabeth Holmes, she got her first idea after a trip overseas. For Charlie Javice, the destination was Thailand, and when she returned, she had the idea to start a microfinance product. During her visit, she recognized that people in developing nations lacked access to credit. Her solution was to have a service that offered small, low-interest and secure loans to those who are underprivileged. The result was her non-profit called PoverUp. It worked as an online platform that used microfinance for social good to, quote, end poverty with the click of a mouse. It would work by harnessing small student contributions to make loans possible. But as we'll later see, even in this, all was not as it seems. After high school, Charlie pursued a finance and law undergraduate degree at Wharton. Her venture made headlines, landing her a feature in Inc. magazine. They called her idea one of the coolest college startups. Around the same time, Fast Company listed her as one of 100 of the most creative people. This was the first time she was able to create media attention. As it would turn out, this would be the most important skill that she had. The recognition caught the eye of the Peter Thiel Foundation. They were offering students $100,000 to leave college and chase their entrepreneurial dreams. However, according to a PoverUp Tumblr post, Charlie withdrew from the competition, choosing to stay in school. Despite missing out on $100,000, the scholarship bid earned her significant media attention, way more than before. Following graduation, Javice began exploring new market gaps that required addressing. Following several business plan revisions, she finally discovered the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, or FAFSA. And this is what it is. Each year, the Federal Student Aid Office distributes over $249 billion in federal aid to 13 million students. The thing is, there's a major issue with it. The application process is notoriously difficult, causing students to leave billions of dollars unclaimed each year. Determined to assist students, she devised a solution that could simplify the whole process to an application of just 5 minutes or less.
It's totally free. That's really important to us for all students to benefit from. So a student takes a picture of their tax returns, then we do all the tax math for you. So no math errors that can put you into very complicated verification, very simple language. We take a flow that might take hours with the federal government, and most students take 4 minutes with us. So that's more or less how it works. You see how much you're eligible for, then you can go to school, feel confident, see what your bill is, and then figure out the gap to help you.
This was the core idea of what she would call Frank. As she described, quote, Frank kind of represented that as a name because it just meant honest. Using her status and connections that she'd gained from media exposure, she was easily able to find financing for her project. In just a few years, Frank had raised more than $20 million in funding and accumulated over 300,000 users. On paper, the company looked like a massive success, with Javice seizing every opportunity to promote herself as an up-and-coming star of the business world. She reflected her thoughts to Insider in 2021, quote, "I built a business and raised funds out of college, turning down a finance job, even though I was told I would fail because I didn't have business experience. But soon, major red flags began to appear." In 2017, the Department of Education issued a cease and desist letter. The reason? Frank may be misleading students into thinking that it's associated with the government's official website. Following the incident, the company changed its marketing to clarify that it had no affiliation with the US government, but this was just the beginning of the problems. In December of 2017, Javice wrote an opinion piece for the New York Times. It was supposed to be on, quote, "The 8 most confusing things about FAFSA." The thing was, the article later had to include a significant correction stating that there were multiple inaccuracies about the aid process. Now, just think to yourself, how is the CEO of a company that specializes in this exact field able to get so many things wrong? It's not a good look. The general public didn't pay much attention though, because Javice was on a media tour. She frequently appeared on articles and podcasts, so much so that it culminated in her inclusion on the Forbes prestigious 30 Under 30 list in 2019. By 2021, Javice had begun exploring the possibility of selling her venture. By the start of summer, the now famous startup founder was able to secure a meeting with JP Morgan. Eager to expand their presence in the rapidly growing niche of student financial products, JP Morgan saw Charlie Javice's company, Frank, as a great way to increase market share and secure talent to help them grow in that sector. During the meetings, Javice held nothing back, and she pitched her company as, quote, "an acquisition machine," amassing over 4.5 million customers in just 4 years. She also claimed that her company knew, quote, "more about their students than any lender, college, or employer." The pitch was a success. After a few meetings, she managed to convince JP Morgan to purchase her company for $175 million. It was an amazing payday for Charlie. Though there was one thing remaining, the bank had to do due diligence. And one of the first items on JP Morgan's due diligence list? To verify those 4.25 million customers that Charlie said she had amassed. At this point, it's important to remember that the bulk of the company's price had to do with the quality of their customer base. The higher the number, the higher the price tag that JP Morgan would be willing to pay. And something peculiar happened. Charlie refused to provide the list. She said privacy concerns. But there was another reason for this. She was hiding something. The fact was, in reality, there weren't 4 million users, but fewer than 300,000. When July 2021 arrived, Charlie needed to present the data for the deal to proceed. She was at a crossroads. Now, should she disclose the actual figures and risk losing a very profitable deal, or fabricate the numbers to guarantee the acquisition? You see, Charlie was worried because before JP Morgan, there was another bidder for the company. But after they saw the real numbers, they withdrew their negotiations. Fearing the loss of another potential buyer, she opted to falsify the data, hoping she could pull it off. According to legal documents, quote, "Javice chose each time to lie, and time and again, she layered fraud upon fraud to deceive JP Morgan." Javice needed to figure something out, and quickly. How was she going to get a customer database with more than 4 million customer emails? This is where her Chief Growth Officer, Olivier Amar, comes into the picture. Initially, Amar approached the company's top engineer to create the fake accounts, but the engineer smelt a rat and he questioned the legality of the request. Javice assured him that, quote, "no one will end up in an orange jumpsuit," but the engineer knew better and he ultimately refused. Having no other option, Charlie had a backup. She knew a guy, a professor in New York who specialized in, quote, "creative solutions for data problems." She would reach out to him for help. With the professor's assistance, they were able to create over 4 million fake accounts by using an algorithm. The algorithm created new fake customer information based on real profiles. After some tinkering, they scraped together a list. They held their breath and sent it off to JP Morgan. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, the banking giant bought it. As a thank you, Javice paid the professor $18,000 for his efforts. and now they just had to wait for their payday. But before that, they needed to cover their tracks. Charlie ordered the destruction of the fake customer list within minutes of a third party completing their analysis. Amar spent an additional $105,000 acquiring a separate dataset of 4.5 million students. This was a contingency plan just in case the other dataset failed. Once the deal closed, Javice received $10 million in compensation and was eligible for an additional $20 million retention bonus as a managing director at JP Morgan. Amar became an executive director and received $5 million as well as a $3 million retention bonus. Around that time, Charlie went onto social media to boast that, quote, "It's not every day that an entrepreneur gets her fairy tale new beginning, not ending." However, this illusion of glory ended almost as quickly as it began. A couple of months later, JP Morgan was busy integrating Charlie's company and team into their operations. They wanted to start utilizing that vast customer base that they acquired. In the process, they dispatched advertisement emails to 400,000 franc customers. And here, it was immediately clear that something was horribly wrong. A mere 20% of emails were even delivered, and an even more minuscule 1% were opened. Investigating deeper, JP Morgan discovered the email exchange with the corrupt university professor, and they were seeing red. Both Amar and Javice would be suspended from their JP Morgan roles, and in December of 2022, JP Morgan filed charges against them. Javice had the gall to retaliate and countersue. She argued that her termination was not just. You know what else isn't just? Faking your entire business. Unfortunately for her, the court found the evidence against her to be compelling, and in April 2023, she was found guilty on 4 separate counts of having, quote, "falsely and dramatically inflated Frank's customer numbers," and, quote, "fraudulently induced JP Morgan to acquire her company."
Now to a high-profile fraud case that's literally happening in front of us in real time. The 31-year-old accused of, quote, falsely and dramatically inflating the number of customers that the company had in a scheme to fraudulently induce JP Morgan to acquire the startup in 2021. She stood to gain more than $45 million from the alleged deception. In January, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon called the acquisition of Frank a, quote, huge mistake. There's a lot of people around a transaction of this size, and not to have any idea that the numbers aren't exactly what is being said.
Kind of go back to FTX.
You know,
it's just shocking that she thought she could just get away with faking the numbers and lying, taking home the pay packet and expecting JP Morgan just to not look deeper. If we dig deeper into Charlie's history, we begin to see the real picture, and it's a real doozy. As it turns out, her squeaky clean image was just an illusion. As a person familiar with her would later remark, quote, "This is exactly what she had been doing all along, and now she has gotten caught for it." Tracing things back to her college years, remember her first venture, PoverUp, the micro-lending platform for developing countries? Well, it was never officially registered as any type of company. There are no records of its existence, and this is despite her bold claims of customers and partnership deals. Some of those partners have even come out and said, "No, we don't know who this person is. We've never done a deal with PoverUp or Charlie Javice." Despite telling Wharton magazine in 2013 that PoverUp raised $300,000 from friends or family, a former board member confirmed it didn't distribute a single loan. And remember the Peter Thiel scholarship that she supposedly turned down? Well, Michael Gibson, who oversaw the grants, stated in a Forbes article, quote, "She was never offered a fellowship, and it bothers me that she is going around saying that. Because of her personality, we didn't trust that she could get started in a real way." Reportedly, her team cheated during a scavenger hunt challenge for the scholarship trials. Gibson commented, quote, "The funny thing is, cheating in a scavenger hunt is a pretty small thing, but it's weird, now she's being accused of something on a much greater, grander scale. It's almost like too much on the nose." He also recalled that one reason for her rejection from the program was that she presented her venture as ongoing when, in reality, there was nothing to show for it. Of course, as we've seen already. Despite all these disasters, she would move on to her next project, Frank, and secure $10 million in funding. But this company was also a mess. Initially, it was a job search website that connected young workers with job opportunities via text message. Then it was a credit score website, And finally, it helps students with aid programs. According to insiders, it was a very rocky start. Allegedly, the venture ran out of money, leading Javice to stop paying her employees and refused to provide promised equity bonuses. This led to a lawsuit, but this disaster didn't matter because Javice was a marketing genius. She could rewrite her own narrative. When she would retell the story, she omitted the lawsuit. She said the layoffs were the most difficult time in her life. So we know that Javice does seem to manipulate and lie, but by the time she launched Frank, she'd gone bonkers. A person present at the first investor meeting said that Javice promoted the product by claiming that they had thousands of signups when they had none. Quote, "We'd all start looking at each other like, this is insanity. You can't be saying these things." Some of the things that were being said were just inexcusably inaccurate. When those same people ended up confronting her about it, Javice would state, quote, "Listen, these old people don't understand. This is how it works. You fake it till you make it." In one of her appearances on a podcast, she stated that, quote, "Being a founder, I'm obviously skewed towards being overly optimistic, and sometimes that works to your advantage, sometimes it doesn't. And there were definitely times where I painted a rosier picture than things truly were." Regarding the internal atmosphere at the company from her previous mismanagement experiences, testimonies from employees painted a picture of misery, with management solely focusing on user base growth and neglecting all other concerns. As it stands, Charlie Javice's story emerges as yet another cautionary tale, drawing parallels with the cases of Elizabeth Holmes and Sam Bankman-Fried. In each of these three scenarios, their marketing prowess significantly outshone their actual management abilities. Javice was marketed as a genius. She lied and faked her way to the top, but bit off more than she could chew when she tried to scam JP Morgan, and it came back to bite her in a big way. This is also a vivid reminder of how the fake it till you make it mentality can backfire, and rapidly. On a wider macro scale, this kind of tells us something as well. Usually during boom times and prosperous times, unethical behavior can easily be overlooked. Tech investors are eagerly jumping on every opportunity because if they don't, they're going to miss out on the next big thing. But when the economic tide turns and sober reality returns, many are left stranded. And this is precisely the current sentiment. The Forbes 30 Under 30 list has been widely ridiculed for showcasing some of the decade's most notorious fraudsters on its magazine covers. However, the selections themselves may not be the issue. As you know, if you've watched my videos, since 2008 until very recently, we've been living in a fake macroeconomic environment, supported by low interest rates and easy money. Now, add social media into the mix where reality and fiction blur, and you have a recipe for individuals that want to take advantage of the times and craft narratives for their own fake success. So that is the story of Charlie Javice, the woman who flew too close to the sun, which was JP Morgan. For me, scammers and fraudsters have always been out there, but there's something about the millennial generation that just seems to be on a grander scale and much more brazen. If you've got any thoughts on why, I'd be interested to hear. That's just my opinion though, and I'm a millennial myself, so I'm not throwing any shade. Alright, so thanks for watching. Hope you did enjoy that. If you did, feel free to look around on the channel. There's plenty of interesting stuff on here on science, technology, and business. My name is Dagogo, and you've been watching Cold Fusion, and I'll catch you again soon for the next episode. Cheers guys. Have a good one.
Cold Fusion. It's new thinking.